Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're taking a closer look at a giant of American history, Abraham Lincoln.
A fascinating figure, isn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, from humble beginnings in a log cabin to leading the nation through one of its most defining moments, the Civil War.
Then think about it. His story, it just continues to resonate today, doesn't it? I mean, centuries later, we're still talking about him. His struggles with self-education, his unwavering commitment to his beliefs, his ability to navigate unbelievably complex situations.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's easy to just think about him as like this president on a pedestal. But when you really dig into the details that, those early life experiences, you start to see how his character really developed. Growing up on the frontier, losing his mother at such a young age, and having limited access to formal education.
Those hardships, those
Yeah.
really forged a resilience in Lincoln that I think you can argue really defined his leadership later on.
And speaking of overcoming obstacles, his dedication to learning despite all of that is really inspiring.
It's true. Walking miles to borrow books.
Imagine that, just to borrow books.
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
It is.
Really speaks to that thirst for knowledge that I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about your own pursuit of information, your desire to learn and grow. Lincoln's journey with self-education, I think it reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge, it's a lifelong thing. It doesn't matter what we face.
It doesn't stop. And you see that drive, too, in the way his career kind of unfolded. He didn't just go straight from, rail splitting to becoming a lawyer.
Right.
There were all sorts of interesting stops along the way.
A lot of different jobs.
Working on a flatboat on the Mississippi River, being a postmaster. Each of those experiences really shaping how he saw the world.
And his time on the Mississippi, that really stands out.
Yeah.
I mean, he saw firsthand the harsh realities of slavery in New Orleans.
This wasn't an abstract concept for him.
No, he witnessed the brutality firsthand.
Yeah.
And
I can't even imagine how that must have stayed with him.
absolutely.
It clearly deeply informed his stance against slavery later on, even when it wasn't popular to do so.
Yeah, and that unwavering commitment to his principles, even in the face of opposition, I think that's a key takeaway here. He didn't just shift with the political winds. Lincoln stood firm.
He did. And it's fascinating to see how those convictions were tested as he stepped into the political arena. He didn't win every battle,
Yeah.
starting with that very first election loss for the Illinois General Assembly.
Setbacks, they're a part of life, but it's how we respond to them that matters.
Right.
And Lincoln, he responded with that characteristic perseverance. He won a seat in the General Assembly in 1834, served a term in the U.S. House of Representatives, even voiced his opposition to the Mexican-American War.
Which wasn't a popular stance to take.
Not at all. It put him at odds with a lot of people.
Yeah, he never shied away from taking a stand, even if it might have cost him politically.
If we're connecting this back to the bigger picture, I think it really foreshadows his actions as president during the Civil War.
Definitely.
This was a man who understood the weight of true leadership and the importance of principled decision-making, even under immense pressure.
Which leads us to the Lincoln-Douglas debates.
Oh, yes.
This series of 7 encounters that really shaped public opinion and put Lincoln on the national stage.
These debates, they were more than just political sparring.
They were like intellectual duels.
Exactly, each lasting hours and delving into really complex issues. Slavery, states' rights, and the future of the nation. I mean, can you imagine crowds gathering for hours captivated by these arguments?
Yeah, it's so different from how politics are today.
It really is.
Like, sound bites and everything moving so quickly. And it was within these lengthy exchanges where Lincoln's eloquence and his moral arguments against slavery really shone through.
And even though he ended up losing that Senate race to Douglas, those debates served as a national introduction to Lincoln.
They did.
They highlighted his intellect, his ability to connect with audiences on a human level.
And that paved the way for his victory in the 1860 presidential election.
An unlikely victory at that.
It really was. He won with less than 40% of the popular vote, but secured a majority in the Electoral College.
Ah, yes, the Electoral College.
A system that has been debated for centuries.
Absolutely. And Lincoln's victory, it's a prime example of its complexities. He understood the nuances of the electoral map. He strategically targeted specific states and ultimately won the presidency despite not winning the popular vote.
A reminder that our electoral system has always been a source of discussion,
Yeah.
and that political strategy can play a huge role in elections.
Absolutely. And Lincoln's victory, largely due to the fractured opposition, it really highlighted the deep divisions that already existed in the nation. A victory that would quickly lead to one of the most challenging chapters in American history, the Civil War. Lincoln's inauguration, it really came at a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
The nation was on the verge of tearing itself apart.
I mean, southern states seceding, the threat of war looming large.
The immense responsibility of trying to hold it all together, a fractured country.
And it's almost impossible to grasp the kind of pressure he must have been under at that time.
Right, and remember, he was dealing with this while also personally grieving the loss of his young son, Willie.
It just speaks volumes about his resilience.
It does.
That even amidst such personal tragedy, he was able to bear the weight of leadership
Absolutely.
and guide the nation through one of its darkest hours.
It's a testament to our capacity for strength.
It really is. And when you look at Lincoln's actions during the Civil War, you really see those qualities shining through.
Oh, yeah.
Every decision he made, every challenge he faced, it's really a lesson in leadership under extreme pressure.
From the beginning, he was up against a seemingly impossible task, preserving the Union while also tackling the incredibly divisive issue of slavery.
And we have to remember, he wasn't this staunch abolitionist from the start.
Right.
His views on slavery, they evolved over time.
Shaped by the events of the war itself.
Yeah.
And his own moral compass.
It's not a simple story. It's not this cut and dry tale of a hero who just swoops in and fixes everything. It's a story about growth.
Absolutely.
About wrestling with those really complex issues.
Making really tough choices with imperfect information.
And that's where the Emancipation Proclamation comes into play.
Right. I mean, it wasn't just a military tactic.
It was a pivotal moment.
A turning point in the war. A declaration that reframed the entire conflict and gave it this powerful moral purpose.
It's easy to forget just how radical that proclamation was at the time.
It was.
In the middle of a bloody civil war, Lincoln basically declared that enslaved people in Confederate states were to be freed.
It was a bold move and one that faced pushback from both sides.
Some thought it didn't go far enough.
And others argued that it went too far.
But for Lincoln, this was an absolutely necessary step.
Towards fulfilling the promise of equality. That promise laid out in the Declaration of Independence.
And it wasn't just the Emancipation Proclamation.
No.
You think about his choice of Ulysses S. Grant as the commanding general.
Right, his focus on keeping the public's support for the war.
His ability to manage the competing interests of different political factions.
All of these actions, I think they show a leader who was strategic and principled.
He had this remarkable ability to surround himself with talented individuals.
To delegate effectively.
And keep a steady hand even when things were incredibly chaotic.
Absolutely.
What would you say stands out to you as his most defining characteristic as a leader during those tumultuous years?
His unwavering faith in unity. I think despite all the challenges Lincoln faced, he never lost sight of the need to bring the nation together to heal those wounds of division and forge a path towards that more perfect union.
And that vision is beautifully articulated in his Gettysburg Address.
A truly remarkable speech.
Isn't it? Packed with so much meaning in just a few lines.
A true masterpiece of oratory, delivered on hallowed ground. In a time when speeches could go on for hours, Lincoln managed to express these really profound ideas with such incredible brevity and eloquence.
He was a skilled communicator.
He was.
Able to distill those complex concepts into language that resonated with everyone.
And tragically, just as the war was ending and the nation was starting to imagine a path towards healing, Lincoln was assassinated.
Just days after Lee's surrender.
It really sent shockwaves through a country that was already struggling to recover from years of conflict.
It's a stark reminder that even in moments of triumph, darkness can still be present.
And the fact that Lincoln didn't have the chance to guide the nation through Reconstruction, to oversee that process of reunifying a divided country.
It adds this layer of sadness to his story.
It does.
What could have been?
Yeah, what if he had lived to see his vision for a reunited and reconciled nation?
It's a question we can only ponder. But even in death, Lincoln's legacy persisted.
It did.
He became this symbol for liberty and equality.
His image enshrined in our national consciousness.
As a symbol of resilience, compassion, and the enduring power of democracy.
And it's a legacy that continues to inspire us to this day. It reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming obstacles, the human spirit has the power to prevail.
But his story, it's not without its complexities.
That's true.
Lincoln's relationship with Mary Todd Lincoln, his wife, was incredibly complicated. She came from a prominent family, was known for her strong personality, and faced intense scrutiny as First Lady.
And their marriage faced its share of challenges, the loss of 3 of their 4 sons.
Devastating.
It's a reminder that even the most public figures have these private lives filled with joy and sorrow, triumph and tragedy, and those experiences undoubtedly shape their actions and decisions on the world stage.
Absolutely. And speaking of complexities, we also have to acknowledge the fact that Lincoln's views on race and equality evolved over time.
They did.
He wrestled with these issues,
Mm,
grappled with the legacy of slavery,
yeah.
and ultimately pushed the nation toward a more just and equitable future. But his path, it wasn't a straight line.
Yeah.
It's a nuanced legacy, one that challenges us to consider both the triumphs and the complexities of his life. And I think it's not about putting Lincoln on a pedestal.
No.
It's about understanding him as a human being who faced extraordinary circumstances and ultimately, left an incredible mark on history.
Right. His story encourages us to really grapple with the complexities of the past,
Mhm.
to acknowledge the progress that has been made, but also the work that still needs to be done.
But I think his second inaugural address, delivered just weeks before his assassination, really embodies that sentiment. In the midst of a nation still divided by war, he spoke of malice toward none and charity for all, urging reconciliation and healing as the way forward.
Powerful words, a message that still resonates today. A call for understanding, for forgiveness, and a reminder that true leadership lies in finding that common ground and building bridges across those divides.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Abraham Lincoln's life,
Yeah.
what stands out to you as the most enduring part of his legacy?
His unwavering belief in the power of democracy and the importance of upholding equality and liberty for all. I mean, he faced so many obstacles, internal and external, but he never wavered in his commitment to those ideals.
And that's what makes his story so powerful. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope, and that we all have a role to play in shaping a better future.
His life, it speaks to the power of the human spirit, the importance of courage, conviction, and leadership that's grounded in principles. It's a story that continues to resonate, to challenge us, to inspire us to live up to the ideals he fought for.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Abraham Lincoln. We hope you've learned something new, been inspired by his story, and maybe even found some connections to your own journey.
As always, we encourage you to keep exploring, delve deeper into the topics that sparked your interest. Never stop learning.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep seeking knowledge.